So today I had to decline this latest lead that I got in. I actually found this lead on my own. Actually, I was on Zillow and I saw this property for sale for 310,000, and I think I did a video on it, a couple videos before this one. And the um, the sellers are going through foreclosure. Two young sellers. 33, 34 years old, husband and wife. And they're going through foreclosure right now. And I sent them a letter in the mail. So I saw their listing on Zillow. They had their house posted for sale by owner. And I saw their listing and I decided to send them a letter in the mail because I looked into their situation a little bit and I looked on the county records and saw that they had bought their house for like $297,000 in December of 2021. When I saw that, I was like, wow, they have like a 3% interest rate, you know. Um, but I knew that the numbers were going to be tight. I told one of the sellers today. I talked to the wife. I text her today and was typing out why I'm declining to take on their deal. The numbers were too tight. Even when I saw how much they paid for the house and when they bought the house, I was like, well, okay, so if they bought it for 297,000 in 2021 of December, in December of 2021, that means that they probably owe like $250,000 today on their loan, and the house is worth like $325,000. So I was like, man, even looking at it from my end without even getting the real numbers from them, it looked tight from my end. The numbers look real tight. The spreads look really tight. But I was like, I'm going to send them something anyway, just in case there's something there. So I sent them a letter, and they text me after they received my letter. They text me and they asked me whether or not this was legitimate. My offer was legitimate because in the letter I said, I see that you guys are in pre-foreclosure, and I have an offer for you, but it's kind of unconventional. I'm planning on assuming your loan that you have, your mortgage. I want to assume your loan and take over your payments and pay whatever fees that you need to pay to get your loan reinstated, like current. Because I found out later after they sent me all of the numbers and everything, the real numbers, I found out that they haven't paid their mortgage since February of 2025. So they have I estimated that they have like $18,000 that they owe to their lender to get their loan current, on top of fees and interest. I mean, that's just the principal that they owe, like 18 grand. So let me draw out the numbers for you. So this is the house. So like I said, the house is worth about 325,000. So I looked at recent sales in the area, and I only saw two houses in this neighborhood, which sold for 350. So both of these houses sold for 350. Because Zillow says that the house is worth like 358,000, but that's wrong. The house is probably worth this. I saw two houses in this neighborhood out of like 20 houses that have recently sold within the last 2 or 3 years. Just two houses sold for 350, and these houses were in great condition, excellent condition, brand new everything. These houses had brand new everything, brand new kitchens, bathrooms, flooring. I mean, it was the typical flipper home. These houses look like the typical flipper houses. So everything was brand new. So they sold for 350,000. This house here, I don't think that it could have been worth 350. So it could have been worth 350. But you would have to get it in excellent condition, like A condition, and that is going to cost you. To get those houses, those two houses that I saw, which sold for 350 a piece, to get a house to the condition that those two houses were in, I mean, you would have to spend a lot of money to get them to that condition. This house, because of what they owe, and what you would have to pay in order to get this house, you will be too close. You won't have enough money. You won't have enough spread in there to get the house in excellent condition and sell it for 350. The spread isn't there. They owe too much. They owe too much. So I saw two houses that sold for 350, and every other house in this neighborhood, like I said, I saw like 20 houses that have recently sold in the last couple of years. And those were the only two. All of the other houses were selling between 270,000 to like 320,000. Okay. So, to be honest, 325 is kind of a stretch. But I did see this. I saw a couple houses. I saw a couple houses in this neighborhood that sold for like 330. You know what I'm saying? So, these houses here were closer to 1,600 square feet. You know what I'm saying? So they were closer to this range. These houses were closer to my subject property here. They were closer to 2,000 square feet. Okay. So, this house is somewhere in here, somewhere around here. That's where this house is. So I said 325, So this is what the house is worth. In as is condition. So this is as is. And most of these houses that sold in this range were in as is condition as well. Only a few were like, had that only a few of these houses look really good inside. Like the homeowners like redid a couple of the floors in some of these houses, painted. There was a few of these houses had painted kitchens. I mean, the cabinets in the kitchens in some of these houses were repainted. So the houses look good. Some of them look, they range from C to B condition. And then, of course, the A condition, because there were two that sold for 350. And these two were in A condition. Okay. So they were in A condition. But I left them out because, this property here, if I were to buy it, I would just sell it in as is condition. I would do whatever needs to be done to get it in as is condition, like C condition or B condition even. So the house will sell probably for about 325 in as is condition. And it might take, for it to sell for this much, is probably like the average time on market for houses in my area. It's like 40 days. So the average time on market here is 40 days. Time on, not of. So the average time on market here is 40 days. And this house is priced right at the median in my area. So this is the middle range, 300, 325, 350. That's the median here in where I live at. So that's the median. So, you would probably expect this house to sell in this range between 40 to 60 days. So that's like 2 months. You know what I'm saying? A month and a week to 2 months. You would expect this house to sell for this long. So, you would have holding costs of like 2 months, and that's best case. And that's best case. So, you would have holding costs here as well. So, so this is the words. So, and like I said, in the previous video I did about this deal when I first got it, the house would rent for about, I'll say the house would rent for about $1,800 to $2,000 per month. Okay, so this is rent. Okay, so here's the rent, and here's the worth of the house in as is condition, as is. Okay, so when the sellers contacted me back from my letter that I sent them, they gave me the real numbers. So what she sent me this document, and what it was a payoff statement from her bank. And with fees and everything, in order to pay off her loan, you would need $292,000 to pay off her loan and get a new loan or pay it cash or whatever. So this is the payoff. This is the payoff. And in this, her loan was right along what I thought it was. But I had ChatGPT do it for me. But I knew it was going to be around this price. I thought it was going to be around $250. It actually was $267. This is what they owed, $267. And they were paying around $1,500 per month. Okay, and then so the loan was $267, and then the rest of it was fees. So this was the payoff. This is how much you needed to pay off their loan and buy the house, basically. Closing costs would have to be in that figure as well, but this is what you needed, $292,000. As you can see, we are already we're there. We're there, bro. We are there. I mean, you basically need $300,000 to pay off this loan, and this is this is what the house is worth, $325, maybe, maybe it's worth $325. That's just an estimate. So so right here, there's no spread here. There's $25, almost $30,000 here. There's no spread here. So you couldn't buy it. You couldn't just pay it off. Could you? I don't know. With me, in my situation, this wouldn't have worked for me, because then you would have a loan here, because if you get a loan for this amount, you'll be paying like, what the rent is, what I'm saying, in payments. You'll be paying almost this much in payments. What would that be? Where is my phone? So let's see. What would you pay? I think interest rates are like 6 point something. I don't know, 6.5, 6.3. So 292 times 0.00. I'll just say 6%. So yeah, so about $1,800, and then plus taxes and insurance and all that. It could be $2,100 with that included, with taxes and insurance included now. So this is what you would be paying if you were just to get a new loan for this. So you couldn't get nothing for rent. So you basically tapped out, unless you do some things to fix it up, and then you can charge more rent. But we're trying to make money as cheap as possible. You know what I mean? So that was out of the question. So then I thought about, assuming the loan. So you could assume this loan, because they had this loan at 260. So they owed 267, and this was at a 3.2% interest rate, right along what I thought they owed. Right along what I thought the interest rate was on this loan. I said around 3%. Before I sent them the letter, I figured that they owed around 250, and I figured that the loan was at 3.2% or 3% interest. So this is what this was the interest rate. So this is an attractive mortgage, saying for a person. This is attractive. If it was just this with no fees at all, and I know I probably could have negotiated the fees because they owed like almost 30 something $1,000 in fees for interest that they had to pay. So in order to assume this loan, so going this route, assume the loan, you would have to pay, I think it was $10,000 in interest. Then you would have to pay another $8,000 for something else. And then it was another $5,000 for two more things. And so I think when I did the calculation, and then it was more things and more things. So I think when I did also, you would have had to get the loan current. And like I said earlier, they owed probably $18,000 in back payments because they haven't been paying the mortgage in this house. Well, they haven't been paying the mortgage, their payments on this mortgage for a year, over a year now. So you would have to pay to get this loan reinstated, get it back current. You would have to pay what they owe. You probably could negotiate some of these things. But I chose not to because I think I thought about negotiating some of these things with the bank, like calling their bank and negotiating some of these things. But then I took it, I halved it. And I was like, even if I negotiate some of this total cost, which was like 40 to 45K. Let's just see. I think I'm leaving out some things because earlier I did the numbers. And so 18 plus 5 plus 8 plus 10. Yeah, so like 40 to 45K. I think I halved these. I was like, what if I can negotiate these costs here down to half of what they are now? And I still was like, man, it's just still too close. It's still too close. The spread was too close, because this is what I can sell the house for. And also, not only that, because this route right here, assuming a loan, assumes that I am going to rent the place. And see, look at this. The mortgage on that loan was $1,500. And then, with taxes and insurance, you probably looking at $1,800 or $1,900. And then the place will only rent for this much, $2,000 best case. Still too close. You coming out of pocket this much. Everything was just too close. It was too close. And so I got to this point and I was like, oh, there's nothing here for me. There's nothing here for me. Because I would have to come out $45,000 out of my money. So I would have to go in my savings and take this out, give this to them. And this is not giving them anything. So this 40 to 45K is what you would pay to get their loan reinstated so you can assume it. And that was all the money that I was willing to come out to reinstate this loan so I can assume this loan. I didn't even calculate giving them any money. I couldn't even give them $5,000. There wasn't enough room to give them anything. So they were on their own. I was just using the numbers that it would take to get the loan reinstated so I can assume it. And that's it. These are the only numbers. I didn't have any money left for them. And I let them know that as well. So, So I was looking at this myself. I was like, man, if I could assume this loan, I still got to come out, 40, 45K. Maybe if I would have negotiated down to 50% of this, that's still 20K. And then and it's just too tight. That probably could have worked, but it wouldn't have worked for me. It wouldn't have worked for me, bro, because she said that the house needed some flooring work because the refrigerator was leaking water. So there was some water damage in the kitchen. So that would need to be fixed. She said that the house needed to be painted. And then, there may have been a slew of other things that needed to be done to this house as well, because you got people in here who have been staying in here for a year and haven't been paying any rent. What kind of people are you dealing with, who are in that situation? What kind of people are you dealing with? This house probably looked like a mess. It probably looked like a mess inside because, if people don't have enough respect to, move out of a place if they can't, keep paying the rent. I mean, maybe they don't have anywhere to go and they just, I guess they figure like, we'll just stay here and not pay any rent and just wait for the foreclosure to come and we'll just move out then. But to me, it just seems like you would, have some respect and just go ahead and face your situation for what it is. Maybe they waiting, borrowing money or waiting for something to happen, a miracle or something. But have some respect, man. Just go ahead and move out. You're going to have to do that anyway because the bank is going to foreclose on you anyway. And because maybe they're thinking that, oh, it's too high to move anywhere, and all that crap. But have some respect, bro. You have to go ahead and face your problems. Just go ahead and face them. When I was young, I used to do that same thing. I used to just run away from problems. You gotta face them. You gotta go ahead and face them so you can get to the next day, bro. Because the stress is just too much in and of itself. You need to go ahead and face your problems and have steps and have a plan to get to the next step. You already done lost this. You already done lost this situation. This house it's not yours. Say go ahead and move out. Go ahead and move out. Don't trash it. But usually people in these types of situations, I've seen it a lot. Usually people in these types of situations, man, they don't care about the house because they're not paying on it. They sad because they can't pay on it. They're upset because they're getting ready to lose the house, so it's not theirs anymore. So they don't care about the house. So the house is probably, the seller was telling me, she was like, oh yeah, it's in okay condition. It just needs some paint and some floorboards or whatever she was saying. I think she was talking about the subfloor. But she said that, but being the type of people that they are, the situation that they in, she's probably lying. That's usually the case. The house probably looked, worse than what she's saying. It probably looked really bad. It probably looks really bad inside. So, you would need to go see it. Of course, you need to go see it. She didn't even send me pictures. I said, send me some pictures, so I can see what it looks like inside. She didn't even send me any pictures. And I was like, okay, that's a sign. I was like, she doesn't want me to see the house. It's a done deal. I even sent this property. So I kind of I was like, as far as me buying it, I'm out. It'll cost me too much. So I sent this house to an investor of mine, a friend of mine, an investor I know. Good friend of mine. I've wholesaled him some houses, bird dogged him some houses in the past. And I sent it to him because he does flips himself. Like he has some buddies that he flips houses with, but they go in and they do all the work themselves. And they do like 1 or 2 flips every year. They don't do a lot. This investor is really more about he's really not a flipper. He's really not into the flipping thing. He's more about income. He has a lot of rentals and that's what he does. He buys real estate to rent it out. But he occasionally flips houses, 1 or 2 houses every year. And he does all the work himself. So I was like, if someone can, get in here and, whatever work that needs to be done, if they can do it themselves, maybe they can make this work. I don't know. So I sent it to him and explained everything to him, gave him all the numbers and everything. And so I sent it to him last night, and he texted me this morning, and he was like, bro, I cannot make any sense of this deal. I tried to. He said he tried to, but he can't make it work. And I was like, I appreciate you looking at it, because I wanted to get a second eye on it just in case I missed something, just in case there was another strategy that could have been used to buy this property and profit from it. I always send properties that I want to buy myself. I always send them to another investor just to put another set of eyes on it, just in case I miss something. So, and other investors do me like that as well. So I have looked at other investors' deals in the past, and recently. This year I've been looking at 2 or 3 deals for another investor, and he has more than me. He has rentals, and he's been investing in real estate longer than me, but for some reason he respects my opinion. And I looked at one of his deals, 2 of his deals, and you just in my spare time, and it keeps you sharp. It keeps you sharp. Looking at these deals, looking at them all the time, and so I do the same thing that guy does with me. I put another set of eyes on him to make sure you're not missing anything, and that's really key. That's the value of having your list of cash buyers. They call them cash buyers or whatever, but that's the value of having a list of people that you can contact, a list of experts in your field that you can contact and compare notes with them. So I had him look at it, and he was like, man, I can't make sense of it. It's a done deal. So I had to text these sellers this morning and tell them the reasons why I'm going to pass on their deal. I told them also in the text that I knew that the numbers were going to be tight before I even sent you guys a letter, but I needed to get the real numbers. So I needed them to send me the real numbers, because maybe they owe less. Maybe some rich grandma or auntie or uncle or whoever, paid off a big chunk of their mortgage or whatever. You never know what's going on. You never know. You have to get the real numbers. You have to get what they actually, I needed to know what they actually owed. I figured it was around 250, but I needed to know, to make a sound judgment on whether or not I wanted to pass this or take this on. So, I told them that I knew that the numbers were going to be tight, but I needed to get them. I needed to get the real numbers so I can know. I wouldn't have been able to sleep if I would have passed on this without having the real numbers. So I had to send them a letter. So, I declined it. I declined it. She never wrote me back. She didn't write me back anything. She's probably upset. I mean, this is a stressful time for her and her husband. They're young, 33, 34 years old. I mean, they can bounce back. They're really young. So yeah, well, I guess she hasn't read it yet, but this is a difficult time for them. They want to get rid of this property, and I told them in a text message as well. I was like, your loan is really attractive. Like, this would be a great deal for someone who wants to live in a house and do those minor updates that need to be done if they're minor. But this would be an excellent deal for a homeowner, someone who's going to move in here that doesn't have to pay a big down payment, for this much to pay this off. They don't have to pay a big down payment, like 3% of a down payment or whatever. This would be an excellent deal for a homeowner. They can get in there and they may have a little bit of equity in here, buying it, paying it off for this much. Closing costs will have to be added in that as well, but you should have a little bit of equity in there. You should have a little bit of equity in there. If the house is worth 325, I mean, these numbers are so close. I usually just skip over these deals, but sometimes, since I've gotten kind of practiced, I should say, I've gotten practiced over the years with structuring creative deals. I have never had anyone accept any of my creative deals But I have been structuring them a lot lately. So, I'm always looking at deals from different angles now. I'm doing creative structuring and traditional, just buying houses traditionally. But I'm also really, really looking at creative structuring, because I'm always going to present that to a seller. I'm always going to present something creative, owner financing or subject to, or, in this situation, assuming their loan here, assuming their loan, because this would have worked. Imagine if I told the wife, I was telling the wife this earlier. I was like, imagine if this would have worked if they would have owed 150,000 on this loan at 3.2% interest. Man, this would be a sexy deal if they just owed 150. This would be a sexy deal if they owed 150, because you would be able to assume the loan for 150, give them 40, give them this 40 to 45K, assume the loan for 150, and then you're in it for like 190 or 195, you know what I'm saying, 195K, and then plus closing costs. So let's just say that you're in it for, 210, and then you get in there and you get this property to C condition. So C condition, you just get it to C condition, make sure everything is working properly, the electrical, plumbing, everything, AC and everything. Make sure everything is in C condition, livable condition. And what that would cost, costs vary. We don't really know what the cost would be, but let's just say it was 30 grand. Let's just say it was 30 grand. So now you at 240K, and the property, worst case would sell for 270. So that's $30,000 in profit that you could have made. That would have been a flip. That would have been a nice flip. You would assume this loan at 150, so you wouldn't have had to come up with this 150. You would have just taken over their 150 at 3.2% interest, and then you get that, and they probably would have been paying on 150. Let's see what the monthly amount would have been on that. 3.2. Wait. Yeah. Oh no. Okay. Around $500 a month. So on this 150, am I right? Let's see. Let's get that's my quick math. Let me see if that's right, because it's almost hard to believe, huh? $150,000 loan for $500 a month. Man, are those days coming back one day? Oh no. Okay. Yeah, around $600 a month, something like that. Let's say 650 on my mortgage calculator there. So you would have been paying $650 per month. Now that looks attractive. Look, you can rent it for that. So what? 1,800 in rent minus 650, and then you got taxes and insurance. So let's add another 3 to this. So it'll be 950 actually. Yeah, 950. I hope that's right, because sometimes I bomb my simple math. Let's just put it in the calculator real quick, because I don't want to regret it if I got it wrong, but I'm sure. That's it. 650 plus 300 is 950. So 1,800 minus 950 is 850. Okay. 850, and then make sure this isn't cut off. Let me write this somewhere else. So 1,800 in rent minus 950 is 850. Okay. So that's what you would get. And then of course you have to take out your expenses, operating expenses, and all that. Um, so but you got minus your debt service here, uh, and your taxes and insurance. You got $850 coming in every month. That looks sexier than nothing coming in. That looks sexier than like $100 coming in per month. Um, and especially if you add this to your portfolio of other houses you may own or buildings that you may own, that's a more, because if you own multiple properties, then they can offset each other. The expenses, your total NOI and everything. Um, you know, if you got more income, like if you add more income to your portfolio, then you can cover the cost of your operating cost of your entire portfolio with the new income that's coming in. If you just had this by itself coming in, um, you know, it wouldn't look as sexy. But if you already had from these other properties here, if you already have 5K coming in profit, and then you add another 850 to this, and then if this is a good property that's appreciating well, you can hold this thing for a while if there's some benefits. If it appreciates well, and you pay a little bit of money from your other properties to keep this thing going until a couple years down the line. It appreciates to a point to where you can sell it and make a profit, and then you can do that. You can do that, or you can just keep it until um, maybe you flip a couple houses or get a bunch of money from something, and then you can just pay this loan off, and then you got everything coming in. Now you got the full 1,800 coming in, because at the end of the day, we do want, if you want to rent out houses, houses are really for living in, but if you want to rent out houses, well, really anything, we want everything to be paid off. We want everything to be paid off. There's some investors out there who advocate for not paying a mortgage off. They look at a mortgage like it's an asset. I've heard investors say that, but really a mortgage, because you do got the debt pay down that increases your equity, but forget all that. If you pay the freaking mortgage off, you're increasing your equities still, you know what I'm saying? And then of course your cash on cash return, the percentage of your return on your cash, it goes down. It goes down because when you got debt and you're putting a little bit of cash up to get that debt, your cash on cash return is exponentially larger than it would be if you were to just pay cash for a home. So once you pay that mortgage off, uh, but still, man, you want to get rid of your debt. You know what I'm saying? You want to get rid of, forget the cash on cash returns. I mean, you want to get a good return. You want to get at least a 10% return on your cash, but and more than that, if you're working with small amounts of money, uh, you want to pay your debts off, man. You want to pay your debts off. You want to pay them off, and you want to pitch it. You want to pay your debts off, um, because there's no risk. Because you lower when you get rid of your debt, it lowers your risk. When you get rid of your debt, you know what I'm saying, it lowers your risk all across the board. You have more income coming in every month. And then also you have more equity, you know what I mean? So, these investors out there that advocate for keeping the mortgage, I'm not really, I'm all for paying off all your debts. You know what I'm saying? If you could pay your house off, pay it off. You know what I'm saying? Pay your house off. You can use your equity. Yes, you would have to get more, you have to get debt to use your equity, but you can grab a bigger piece of your equity, and put it into a income producing asset. So this deal is a dud. I passed on it. I told them that I would contact them if anything changes on my end, but nothing's probably changing. So this property will probably go to foreclosure unless they're able to sell it. They have it online right now for 310, so they're trying to sell it for 310. And I guarantee you they have some interest. because the neighborhood is a really good neighborhood that they're in. But I'm going to pass on it. I just wanted to update my YouTube on this, so I can put this in memory. So maybe if I look back on this video, I can think about this property later on down the line, because I am using my YouTube as like a filing cabinet. You know what I'm saying? I'm filing these deals away so I can remember when I go through and look at my videos on my channel. I can go back and look at this and be like, oh, I wonder what became of that deal. Because once it goes to foreclosure, man, when properties go to foreclosure, bro, the bank buys it back at when they foreclose it at the auction. So when the house goes into foreclosure, the bank usually buys them back and then sells them for what they paid for the house. The bank, they really just want to get their loan. I think sometimes for the most part, they buy the house back at what they have the loan for. What they loan the house, what they loan to the owners of the house. They buy the house for that amount at auction, so then they can get someone that can come and buy the house from them on the market. So they buy it from the auction at what the loan is, the amount the loan is, and then they put it up for sale on the market, and they sell it to an end buyer, and that end buyer gives them their money back. But see, once a property goes to foreclosure and everything, even during that auction process, it gets competitive, really competitive. You know what I'm saying? And then of course, if the bank gets it, they put it on the market, and then like you competing with everybody. My goal is to always try to have no competition whatsoever. You always got competition. I have competition, in every instance, but I'm always trying not to let these properties go to market. I'm always trying to. I'm a big advocate of getting off market deals. That's my whole thing. It's my course is about that as well. And look in the description if you want to learn how to find deals like I find deals. But that's my whole thing, is trying to find properties off market, because that's your advantage. When you find them off market, you have no competition. You have no competition. That's why they worth so much to investors. When you send deals to them, and you ask for $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 as an assignment fee or bird dog fee, or finder's fee, bird dog fee, finder's fee. You ask for so much and you will get that amount, because what you have is very valuable. There's no competition for the end buyer. There's no competition when you dealing with a seller off market. There's no competition. That's really, really valuable. So people like me, that go out here and find deals off market, and we're not realtors or anything like that. So we can tell investors whatever. We can tell them about the neighborhood, the race of people, how many people are in the neighborhood, and anything that can be that's a red flag for the fair housing. That whole situation. Realtors have all these rules that they have to follow. What I'm saying? They have all these rules. But see, as an investor, if you can manage to find deals and do it at a profit, without doing it at a loss, if you can manage to do this as an investor, just do it as an investor. But at the end of the day, you want to be a buyer. You don't want to be just finding deals for people for the rest of your life. You only do that if you can't buy the property yourself. After you get to a certain point. In the beginning, you need to hand them off to other people, but you don't want to do that forever now, because you don't want to be looked upon as a real estate agent, or someone who is just out there getting commissions, because that's kind of what finder fees are. They're kind of like commissions. But it's totally legal to do this. In some states, you're operating in a gray area. Some states have rules about how you can market properties and all of that. But as long as you have an equitable interest in a property, like once you get a property on a contract, you have equitable interest. And as long as, this is another thing, as long as you can prove that you could buy a property that you say you're going to buy, that you're going into contract for, as long as you say that as long as you can prove that you can buy this property, you can sleep well at night doing this, because that's one thing that you would have to prove, is that I could have bought this property if I wanted to. Even though I bird dogged it, I gave it to another person, I could have bought it. And the real estate commission and people aren't out to get you. Saying like that. People who get in trouble doing this business, doing wholesaling and bird dogging, the wholesalers and or investors that get in trouble doing this are the ones that start trouble. If you start trouble, then people can, of course, come into your situation and find something to fault you on. They can find something wrong with what you're doing and take you to court for anything. You can take somebody to court for whatever. But if people have to look into your situation, if you're a shady person and you're doing shady business out there, people will look into your situation and find something. They'll find an old tax return that you did wrong or whatever. But you're pretty safe as long as you do good business. As long as you're a good person, you're good. You know what I'm saying? You are good. No one is really out there to get you. There's no. The IRS is not out there looking to get you unless you are doing some shady stuff. You know what I'm saying? You have to be honest, report everything, report all your income. I report all my income that I've been making in, wholesaling and everything. I report every cent, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm not going to, I'm doing this with integrity. You know what I'm saying? The moment you start trying to hide stuff and trying to be shady, doing shady business deals, that's when you get in trouble. But as long as you're out there, you're paying your taxes doing this, and you know what I'm saying? Because you do kind of feel like when you start this, you do kind of feel like you're operating in a gray area. You don't know if this is legal or not. You know what I'm saying? You got some people on YouTube saying it's illegal, then some people saying it's legal. But this is just, you're just talking to people and making deals, just like you would if you were trying to buy a lawnmower from somebody. You do, that's the same. It's just a house. It's just a house, but once you start trying to operate like you're a realtor or operate like you're a real estate agent, trying to give people advice on, trying to take people around and showing them houses without a license and, telling them they should buy this house. And once you start doing that, like acting like a real estate agent, and if somebody buys that house that you suggesting that they should buy, and you showing a house around to people, and if something goes wrong and they feel like the people who bought it, if they feel like you were at fault because you convinced them and made them believe that this property was a nice property to buy, you're going to get in trouble, bro. You're going to get in trouble. And you do need to be a licensed person in order to make that call. This is a nice house you should buy, because real estate agents, when you buy a property with a real estate agent, they show you the flood plains and, they tell you all of the things that are wrong with the house that they know of. You should be a licensed person. You should be educated in that field. You know what I'm saying? Just like an appraiser should be educated in appraising houses. You know what I'm saying? You just can't take any Joe Blow's version of what a property is worth. You just can't take that. So that's all I want to talk about today. I'll talk to you guys later.